That's okay, I'll manage. Everybody's here? You ready to go, Ms. Bell? Okay. All right. Before we begin this meeting of the Social and Economic Justice Commission, we would like to recognize that we are gathered this evening on the ancestral territory of the Albany people. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal of Native people from this territory and pay respect to the Albany elders, both past and present, as well as living descendants and future generations. Okay. You want to do the roll call?
Sure. Member Downs?
Here.
Member Kerr?
Here.
Member Marks?
Here.
Member Parsley?
Here.
And Chair Grossman.
Here. Okay, approval of the minutes. Any changes or issues with the minutes that anybody noticed?
I move that we accept as written.
Second.
I just, under item 6.2, sugar sweetened beverage tax, I thought we should add that Judy Kerr agreed to report to represent the commission at the council workshop. If we could add that line. Anything else? If not, can we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Public comment. Anyone from the public wish to make a comment about something which is not on the agenda this evening? No? Okay. Okay, the first item is...
Can I make one announcement?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I
announcement.
should have asked for announcements.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to, Isabel printed this out, and it was in the weekly email newsletter that went out, and I was really impressed. It's $150,000 for down payment help if you make less than the area median income, and $100,000 if you make 120% of the area median income. So, and this is all from those A1 funds when we passed the A1 housing bond. And I didn't think it was going to be very much money, but I think $150,000 is a considerable amount of money to help first-time home buyers. So I want to get the word out about this. So thank you for leaving it here and putting it in the weekly newsletter, because there's people I know, like I was saying, that pay a lot of rent but don't have the down payment. So this could help them considerably. $150,000 would be a little ways towards something.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to add an announcement that Thursday this week, April 4th, there will be a presentation at 7 o'clock on unlearning racism that the Parks and Recreation and Open Space Commission and Department are sponsoring at the library. So if you're interested in that issue, try to attend.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can make an announcement.
Yes, of
So
course.
Margie already talked about AC Boost, and also I wanted the commission to know about Renew Alameda County, which is a affordable home renovation program, also paid by A1 funds. And the program is administered by Habitat for Humanity, and they basically provide some funding for to make the homes of low-income individuals more comfortable to live in. So that's another one that just came out, actually. And then the last program that from the county that is also beefing up its advertisement is the coordinated entry system. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this program. We had Berkeley Food and Housing Project present on this a couple months ago. But basically now they're doing outreach in the form of flyers and basically letting people know how to reach the system so that I'm going to need to go ask her to stop. Yeah. So all these flyers are available on our website. They're distributed at all of our city facilities, and they're in the e-news that goes out on a weekly basis and is posted on our website.
Is there, Isabel, maybe this is something we can talk about at some point later, but we're more and more distributing things on the internet, and not everybody has access, including probably the people who might be the logical targets for some of these funds. And I'm wondering whether that e-news could be at least occasionally distributed to mailboxes.
Right. Something that can be looked into, but at this time it's really meant to be, this is the city's way of providing information on different programs, what's going on in the city via the social media.
Yeah.
Or
I'm not being critical, I'm
Yeah.
just saying it'd be good if we could. Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other announcements? All right, we have no presentations, so we move on to item 6.1, the Homeless Emergency Aid Program. Isabel, do you want to brief us?
Sure. So we went to council on March 18th with information on the Homeless Emergency Aid Program, which is administered by Alameda County. And these are funds that are coming from the state of California. And they are meant to be emergency assistance for immediate needs, to help people who are experiencing homelessness get housed. The city of Albany is part of the continuum of care for Alameda County, and is slated to receive $338,234. And the funds need to be expended by June 2021, and half of those funds need to be awarded by January 2020. So it's a very quick timeline for the expenditure of the funds. So we went to council and gave them an overview of what has been, how the funds came about, and eligible activities as outlined in the county application. So, the funds can be used for services, including outreach, health and safety, education, criminal justice diversion programs, homelessness prevention activities, and other services. The funds can also be used for rental assistance or subsidies, so including but not limited to housing vouchers, rapid rehousing programs, flexible housing subsidy funds, and eviction prevention strategies. Can also be used for capital improvements and administration. So a small percentage is allocated to administration, which is 2.5%. So again, because the funds need to be expended quickly, there is an obligation to look towards existing programs or one-time expenditures with the most potential for impact, positive impact in a quick manner. And we outlined some potential existing programs that could be augmented with the use of HEAP funds and one-time expenditures. So one of the programs was Albany Project Hope, with assistance from Berkeley Food and Housing Project, would be to increase rental assistance and housing subsidies to allow for deeper and longer subsidies for people needing to be housed or to remain housed. Increase housing prevention activities, which council was very interested in, and allocate funds to a flexible housing subsidy funds to be used for moving costs and landlord incentives. When we met with BFHB, one of the things they said was needed was a flexibility pool fund to be able to do other things than paying for rental subsidies, such as utilities, help landlords say yes to housing people who don't have necessarily the best background, and then also help people who move in and who have no beds, no sheets, no cooking utensils, help them by providing some funding to make their new home more welcoming. The other program is encampment removal. So right now, the city's Public Works Department handles the encampment removals, and the funds would be used to hire a contractor with expertise in handling biohazards, needles, and other hazards associated with homeless encampments. And so council also found that this was an okay use of the funds. They appreciated that too. And then the last one was a one-time expenditure for an auto-cleaning public toilet, which would be located in the business district. So for, and the auto-cleaning public toilet is actually a toilet that self-cleans after a number of usage, and then requires less maintenance than a regular restroom that you would find at a park. And this toilet would be open 24 hours a day. But then, there's quite a high cost associated with this expenditure, and we anticipate that if the funds would be used for this one-time expenditure, most of the funds would be used for that. We're starting, based on the direction provided by council at the last meeting, we've started to do more analysis on the cost of the toilet, and it's the site preparation is very expensive, and running the utilities to the unit is going to be expensive too. So there's still a lot of unknowns, but it's.
Question about that?
Mm-hmm.
It says in here that the cost of the single cleaning toilet ranges between $160,000 and $200,000, and then ongoing costs for maintenance would be required. So the $200,000, does that include putting in the infrastructure? I mean, I would assume.
It includes part of it.
Okay.
Basically, the actual cost of the toilet, I think, is between $110 and $120, depending on the model. And but bare bones, just nothing fancy. It ranges around there. And then the cost for site preparation, at the time I had estimated, around $60,000 to $80,000, but it's proving to be probably more than that. So this is a staff report that I wrote when we first presented this to council. We've done some research since then. I don't have, Public Works is doing the research, so I don't have the information just yet, but from the few conversations I've had so far, and depending on the site also, so it just depends. So this would be, so council asked that we come back to them with some information on the auto-cleaning public toilet, and also ask that some input from the Social and Economic Justice Commission on the use of HEAP funds. The plan is to return to council at their April 15th meeting. So what they've asked is just basically, what do you think? Do you think that these existing programs would be a good use for the funding? Do you have any other ideas that could help people who are experiencing homelessness, but also taking into account that the funds need to be expended very quickly, and that we're looking at existing programs, not to implement new programs and one-time expenditures.
Okay.
So the staff recommendation is to basically discuss the item, and once you've built some consensus, make a motion that I would include in my staff report to council on the April 15th meeting.
Thank you.
Why don't we all each of us say what we think, and then see if.
Can I ask one question? Would that be okay?
Of course.
Did the second, the encampment removal, was that a request from Public Works? I mean, are they, did that?
Yes, so basically,
Okay.
Public Works currently does most of all of the encampment removals, and they could benefit from having some funds to hire a contractor to help with the biohazards. It depends, but they probably remove about 6 to 10 encampments yearly.
Per year.
And most of them are small. They're not big encampments, but they do have to, it's something that they have to do.
And as far as you know, that request was engendered by the biohazard rather than overall workload question.
Right,
Okay.
yes.
Could I just clarify? So I just want to clarify, are you saying that they think the toilet would cost like the whole $338,000?
Well, at this time, as I said, the toilet itself
Right,
is
is 110.
120,
Yeah,
like
okay.
with tax and shipping, probably maybe 130. And then it's the cost of
Okay, I just wanna
site
get-
preparation that is unknown right now. But I hope that by April 15th, I will have more information on that. But if it's something that council and the SCJC would prefer that the funds go to, then we would just continue to explore that option further until we come up with because then we have to come up with the location and the costs associated with the location.
Well, I'll kick it off then. I would like to see us direct all of this money to rental assistance and subsidies. I think that's where it will do the most good in terms of getting people housed. Spending $300,000 on a toilet is sort of Pentagon level, and I'm not in favor of that. And I don't want to see it be used to deal with encampments. I would like to see it be used to house people. Encampments are a symptom. Let's deal with the real issue. So that's my preference.
Well, I was just going to ask a question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So the entire amount of funds has to be spent by June 2021?
Yes.
So when we're talking about, we can't just create a fund that we keep for,
No.
so that whole amount of money would have to be spent in essentially a little over a year and a half.
2 years.
So that's my concern with the entire amount for going towards the rental assistance. I think that's, I don't know if we can house that many people in a year and a half, because we can't carry that money over to July of 2021. All that money has to be spent by.
If it's in the form of vouchers, it may be able to be encumbered in an account.
Right. No, I think the other piece to this is the county is at this point drafting contracts with each of the cities and for the use of this funding. And we haven't seen the contracts yet, so I'm not quite sure what their requirements going to be, but they're the ones, who will administer the funds for this and report back to the state. So they will have probably very specific deadlines and demands.
I don't know, but it seems to me it's possible based on other such contracts that I've seen that if you encumber the funds, if you were to set up a voucher fund, which was part of the program, it might not all have to be spent at that moment by particular individuals. In any case, I would rather see it go to that use.
And then it's also correct that the city has to spend 30%?
Yeah, there's a match.
Match,
Yeah, a
30%.
match, a 30% match, which existing programs would satisfy.
So Project Hope would be the match.
And it can be, again, that match has not been defined by the county, but we hope that it can be, general fund, CDBG, any fund that is, funds that are being used towards homelessness could be used as a match.
And HOPE is all city money, right? There's no,
Excuse me?
HOPE is all city money.
Yes, it's community development block grant money and general fund money.
I'll wait till after public.
Should I go? Are
Yeah,
you?
sure.
Okay.
Or if you're ready.
I have several ideas. One of them, the social worker at Albany Cares told me that she would love to have a bunch of transit cards that she could give to people that come in, or telephones, prepaid telephones. And I know that we had some transit cards at the shower program, and people really, really appreciated it. It was a way for them to get to their doctor's appointments and other places that they needed to get to. And so I would like to see some money spent on that, that kind of thing that we can give out, something that maybe our police would have on them if they run into a homeless person that, Anne Marie talked about doing a little kit that the police could give the person that has maybe stuff in it that would be helpful to a homeless person. I also think that there is a shower volunteer who has said that if she could get a non-interest loan, she could fix up a room in her house to rent it out at a below market rate rent. And there may be other people in Albany, and one of the things that the HEAP funds talk about is lowering the building standard so that you're able to put in second units, or that the planning department is not as quite as strict as they might be to allow these units to go forward if the person would agree. The person would have to agree that it would be below market rent for a certain number of years. I think in the HUD world it's 55 years, but I don't think we expect that much. But I think, it would be one way of building up the stock in Albany if we were to give people no interest loans. I also think if we had a fund, a diverse housing fund, we've had her, she's spoken here, a client who needs a storage space. If we could pay for a storage space for her for 2 years, then she wouldn't have to worry about that. Then she could worry about getting herself housed or doing other, that's a big thing on her mind. Getting her vehicle in running order. Not just her vehicle, but, if your vehicle is what you live in, we should be able to help you get it so that you can live in it, it's not the ideal place, but then if we can take care of some issues for you, then you can move on to take care of other issues for yourself. I also think that if we could have some type of health care that would come to the showers, a van that could come, when the homeless are there, and provide some kind of health services to the people that come to the showers. I think that would be good. I think we really need a porta potty. I think the homeless would really appreciate a porta potty, but I don't want to spend $338,000 on a porta potty. I really wouldn't mind spending the $110,000 on it because of the speed at which we have to use the funds. But I'm with Bart. I don't want to spend $338,000 on it.
Okay.
Sure. Or do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think there's two things that I want us all to keep in mind as we proceed with the discussion, but first among them is the timeline that we're all operating on, which is we need to get back to council by 2 weeks from yesterday, and there needs to be a final recommendation and a grant requisition in by April 30th. So we got to move quick. And in light of that, my second concern is that we had a presentation from Project Hope, from Berkeley Food and Housing, I believe it was our February meeting, where they specifically requested $50,000 additional funding for this calendar year. So with that, I want to project my ideas. One is to provide Project Hope with twice the amount that they requested from us, which would be $100,000 for Project Hope, but an additional $50,000 for a total of $150,000 targeted to enhance property owner participation in voucher-based programming. There are no Section 8 housing available in Albany. And we can't just sit back and throw money at an issue where we're not addressing the supply side. So I would like us to not only provide voucher money, but also, I do think that the citizens of Albany are willing to consider, as we've heard a couple other commissioners suggest, people are willing. They just need a way. So I'd like $150,000 targeted of this 338, targeted toward Project Hope. 100,000 of that would be directly to Project Hope funds and participation and staff support, and then $50,000 of that to enhance homeowner or landowner or property owner participation in voucher programming. So that's 150. I do think that public toilets are very important. I don't think we need to have water and running toilets at every station. I think that you can very successfully test the utilization of public toilets with porta potties. And you can set up a weekly maintenance program with a porta potty at 2 or 3. I haven't actually priced this, so I don't know how much it would cost. But I'd like to target the remaining $148,000, I think, to exploring non-water, non-power public toilet facilities. So in other words, hand wash stations and porta-johns. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you all so much. I think these are good points that have been raised. I mean, I agree that I think the majority should go to food and housing for Project Hope. My only question, and I would, and Judy's comments were helpful on this, and I would also be interested in hearing others, is about the level of funding that they, I mean, I'm sure they could always use more, but that they have specific plans for and plans that would work in this timetable. So I'm open to the idea that we should recommend all of it, but I'd love to know more about their readiness as opposed to the plan that Judy laid out, which did seem well thought out to me, responsive to what they've asked for. The only other thing, the toilet, I'm sympathetic to the need, and I also understand the utility of something that's auto cleaning and auto opens as a way of making sure that the toilet's available for bathroom use, and that it's not doesn't, create, say, health problems or so on if it's, that could happen without consistent maintenance. But I am sensitive to the point that's been raised about the extraordinary amount of the funds that it would take up. The only other thing that I noted in looking at the goals of the program was, an impetus within the program to make sure that we're looking at youth-directed, at programs directed toward youth or youth who are homeless or in danger of becoming homeless. And I don't know if this could be just a part of if we can fulfill that through the BFHP, or if there's some other forum that we would need to use in order to be fulfilling that.
One comment is that in the report on Project Hope in our packet, one of the things they talked about specifically there is that they need subsidies. They need vouchers. So that would, I mean, if we're going to give them $100,000, we need to say for what.
Right.
If it's more services, then then it can be for more services. But I think we can't say to council, just give $100,000 to Project Hope.
Right.
But what I would say also is if you decide that, the funding should go to BFHP to support Project Hope in their efforts to house people, for landlord incentives, that's what I'm hearing, subsidies and some flexible monies, then, and if council agrees and, directs staff to move forward with that, then staff would talk to BFHP and say, okay, we have this pot of money, and what would be realistic, how to divide it so that it can be spent by the timeline. So, there's still, you don't have to figure out how much money would go, just have to figure out, your recommendation should include the programs that you'd like, included, but you don't have to worry so much about the specific amounts.
Does anyone feel ready to make a motion?
I think we need to hear from the public.
Okay. Anyone from the public wish to speak to this?
Susan Renault, Albany resident. I support both Margie and Judy's ideas about encouraging Albany homeowners to maybe accommodate some low-income person, and that could be with low-interest loans or no-interest loans, or with vouchers. But I think it's a very worthwhile thing, and I know there's a lot of Albany homeowners who have space, and maybe they just haven't thought of it or don't know how to proceed. So I do support that. I also would like to just say that I don't see the lawyer here tonight, but my understanding of the law is that you can't remove encampments or you can't remove tents if you don't have a place for the people to go. I think that was a Ninth Circuit Court ruling. I don't know how Albany is dealing with that, but I just find it immoral if you don't have a place to put people to remove whatever they have. And that includes vans and cars as well. And I think that the Solano merchants should pay for a toilet because it benefits them. And we could provide porta potties in various areas. I think that's a very good idea. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Alan Maris, member of Diverse Housing Working Group. When I volunteer at the CARES referral desk for housing for people, housing and services, it's very difficult to find available housing at any level. I mean, you're well aware that there's a housing shortage at all levels, and it's really severe at the very low and no income level. So it's going to require some special effort. I'm not even sure we've spent the full $50,000 that we made available to Hope Project. I think it's a good idea to allow some funding to prevent homelessness if somebody is about to get kicked out of their living facilities. That may be what you can, a combination of that. I mean, you have a very short time frame to spend this money. We have people having a critical need right now, but the facilities aren't that available. And I would push a little harder on the city council to approve an affordable housing project in Albany, which provides housing for very low and no income people, a significant number of apartments for, small apartments for very low and no income people. That's a long ways off as well. This meeting's not going to help that. I think this is a good start, but boy, got some hurdles to get past to really serve these people without homes, living on the streets. Thank you.
Let's bring it back to the commission.
So I just wanted to ask some questions first because I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around this, and I will say I'm really disappointed because I actually did think that the self-cleaning toilet was a very good idea. We can't expect businesses to allow non-paying customers to come in and use their restrooms, whether they be persons experiencing homelessness or just the general public. And it's disappointing to hear. It was because I think in the original price range it would have been perfect, and then you could have taken the $100 and some odd thousand left over to and then you might have been able to use that for subsidies and other things, and spend that money in the time frame that we have. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen now. And it's difficult because we don't know exactly what the county is really looking for. Correct? I mean, we don't know if we get a voucher program, if we can carry those funds if they're in the voucher, and if they say no, then we're kind of...
Right. The voucher program is not a program we currently have, so we'd have to build it from, and something I would have to look into if that's something you want to...
Has Albany Cares weighed in on this at all? I mean, that's not really covered under Berkeley Food and Housing.
Right. So Albany Cares is a city program, and we currently have funding to provide services for Albany Cares, but Albany Cares is not specific to homelessness. So that's why funding for Albany Cares probably wouldn't qualify, would be harder to qualify. And I'm not quite sure what we would use, the funding for at this time for Albany
It
Cares.
seems to me that Project Hope has had vouchers and does have access to vouchers. They do have a model for that. They do have a model for rapid rehousing.
But it's not vouchers. We don't provide vouchers. We provide housing subsidies, but
Or I'm a subsidy.
yeah, so subsidies which basically are paid directly to the
Yeah,
landlord
yeah.
on behalf of the tenant.
Yeah.
But we don't have any
Yeah.
vouchers that.
I may have introduced the phrase vouchers in error.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'd like to retract that.
Yeah, so it's housing.
But I'd also like to speak to my experience as a volunteer at Albany Cares and reiterate the fact that the issue is not whether people have money to find housing. The issue is whether there are houses to be found.
Yeah, I think that's the real issue, is if we put this money into subsidies, if there's no stock for those subsidies.
That's why landlord incentives is an important pot also, because like Margie mentioned, if, an incentive could be to help a landlord get a room together to be able, so that money, and we would leave that up. BFHP does landlord incentives. They're looking for funding for landlord incentives. So that's something, and they would have, they would basically assess how to best use the funds to help landlords house people.
I don't think porta potties are a way to go. I will tell you that, having dealt with many years of porta potties, that it is not a system that you want to, because eventually what you'll be having is people taking ownership of that porta potty and not leaving that porta potty. And it's just not a way. And then you have graffiti, you have damage, you have all those things that come along with that. And then the cost, I think we're underestimating the cost of a porta potty. It's pretty cost prohibitive. I'm really in a quandary here because I don't see how we're going to spend all this money.
Well, if we devoted it to subsidies and landlord incentives, those two things are things that already exist programmatically, right?
And there's prevention also. They also use prevention, and council was very interested in prevention funding also.
Because I think, given the time frame, anything, starting a new program is going to be difficult within that time frame and with this amount of money. $300,000 is not that much money. It might help somebody fix up a room. It might, it wouldn't, for example, build an accessory unit.
Right.
Or it might build one. So it seems to me a lot of the things we're talking about are things that Project Hope has connections to.
And is already doing.
And it might make sense to simply utilize that and let them give us some kind of an estimate on how they would spend the funds in terms of the priorities we've mentioned.
Can I ask a quick question with regards to the Public Works Department? Is there like a one-time expenditure that they would be looking at that they don't have that we could potentially use, they could use to help this if they do have to clean up encampments?
Yeah, they haven't done any research on how much it would cost to hire a contractor, but they estimate that probably something between $75,000 and $100,000 for 2 years would be, would help. It doesn't have to be that much, but that's their suggested amount.
But if you don't have an encampment in that time frame.
Right. Well, then, but there are encampments, though. It's.
I'd like to, we're sort of having a free-for-all conversation up here, so I'd like to kind of respond to a couple things that Brian has raised, and that is, I think the Seattle experience with self-cleaning toilets is, I found myself doing research on toilets, and it was a fascinating moment in my life. I learned a lot, and I learned that the city of Seattle had actually purchased, I think, on the order of somewhere between 7 and 10 porta-johns, and they have now removed every single one of them because they became dysfunctional and they became unused. I think I do support the notion that we need toilets, public toilets availability. There's a number of ways to approach this. We have public toilets that close because the parks close. We also have the option of testing whether a portable toilet could stand as a beginning point for a more permanent porta-john, or a more permanent public toilet, I should say. So I really think that we should, I don't want to drop public toilets from our recommendations. I really think that that's something we can benefit from, not just the people who are on the streets homeless, but anybody who's walking from the BART station to the other end of town might find themselves in need on the way. And that would be a useful thing to have. So I'd like to somehow remain in attendance with the self-cleaning toilets. And I also wanted to address the question of cleaning of encampments. I certainly am sympathetic to what Public Works staff have to do, but I would assume that what they have to do is not exclusive to the use of, or to the process of cleaning encampments. Human excrement is on the street, not just in encampments. Needles are on the street, not just in relation to encampments. So all of those skills and training really should be provided to our people who work really hard to keep our city clean, regardless of whether they're cleaning encampments or not. So I think it's a little bit specious to associate the use of, or the need to have that skill set specifically with cleaning encampments.
Is anyone ready to make a motion? Let me make a motion just to give us something to talk about then. What I'm hearing so far is we would recommend spending a significant portion of the money to provide further support to Project Hope in terms of subsidies, in terms of rental incentives, and also homelessness prevention. And that would be one chunk of money. We would also, it sounds like we're interested in seeing further work done on the possibility of public toilets. This might not be enough to produce one, but it may be enough to get us started. So those two things I'm hearing very strongly, and I would therefore suggest that we recommend those two things. In terms of, by the way, just as an aside, in terms of cleaning encampments, this is called Homeless Emergency Aid Program, and I don't see that cleaning encampments is helping anybody who's homeless. So I wouldn't see that as appropriate. So that's my motion. Did you get that?
Oh, yes, I did. Mhm.
You want to read it back?
Okay. Provide the funding to support Project Hope with housing subsidies, landlord incentives, and homeless prevention funding, and to see that further work be done on researching public toilets.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Comments, questions?
I would just like to, I think I want to bring up that there were a lot of complaints about Project Hope. And there was a call for Project Hope to be investigated until we got this new person, Caitlin, who everybody seems to really like. And I see her working all the time. I see her getting results for people, people getting housing that were non-housed. So I just want to bring that up about Project Hope, that it's kind of dependent upon who our person is, who's working for us and with us. So I just want to keep that in mind when we're giving them all this money, that we're entrusting them with a lot of money, and I want to be sure that they're responsive to what we need them to be, and that the homeless feel that they're responsive, because I think the last person, the homeless, really didn't feel that she was very responsive to their needs. And I want to put that out there. I think we can't just give them all this money without saying, and we expect you to work for it, and we want results, and we want, we want you to treat our people with respect. And
That's the next item on the agenda.
Okay.
Or not the next, but soon.
And so do we feel like, if I understand the motion now, we would say these are two priorities, and then kind of leave the arithmetic?
So the specifics to the council and the staff, I think. I don't see that there's time to do more than that. I mean, we really have to decide tonight. If we're ready to vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that's it. Thank you. Moving on to the work plan. Isabel and I undertook to modify the draft that we had at the last meeting to include some of the comments that were made at this meeting.
And I also provided a copy of the revised work plan. I think the one that was in the packet had a review panel, which made it very small, so I included a hard copy. Yes. And then the other thing is the council approved their strategic plan last night, and you also have a copy of that.
Does it change anything?
There's some changes that I think the commission should go over. I can highlight some of the changes.
Would you?
Sure. So if you go, basically last night, so there's a new format which the mayor, vice mayor, and city manager worked on, and
Do you have that?
yes, I also provided you a copy of.
Thank you.
Yes. And so the first page is basically the same 5 goals for the strategic plan. And then there's a brief overview and the city's mission and vision statements. And then on page 3, the 5 goals are mentioned with some of the what are called now work plan items. And so going to page 5, under promote housing availability and quality, which basically is the first, if you look at your work plan, was the the first item of your work plan. You can see now that the work plan items on page 5 over here and objective 2. So those are now the work plan items. I think they're fair. I think they're pretty similar to what the previous work plan was, but you may. So they're just a little. Some of them are a little bit. The statement is a little bit brief and more focused on the work plan. The work plan are a little bit more focused. So, so you may want to.
Can I wanted to add something in this part of it, and if I go to this,
Yes.
this is.
Yeah, there's another copy. I provided another copy of this that's easier to read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wanted to add,
Well, let me just make
Okay.
sure that Isabel's finished and we have,
all right.
Well, yeah, do you want me to go over all the entire document and then you can discuss, you can
only
go
the
back to
things
your
that
work
apply
plan?
to us, yeah.
Yes, okay, so that would be the first one. So on page 5, objective 2, promote housing availability and quality. So it would be the first one. And then the next one is on page 7. Engage our diverse community. So there's now the same objective, connect with and engage community with the, I think there's, and then the work plan items are to continue outreach and service referrals through the Albany Cares program, and then identify opportunities to conduct additional outreach to promote the utilization of available low-income senior tax exemption. So those are two things that are currently on your work plan as well. And then the last one is under objective number 3, page 9, continue to promote community inclusivity. And this one changed quite a bit. Basically, the council felt that it's a very important topic and that they want to handle themselves for the moment. So they want to establish a subcommittee of the council, which the original, last night's version mentioned that it would be a subcommittee of the mayor and vice mayor to seek input regarding unmet needs for municipal services for sectors of the population, such as low-income households that include members of minority groups, households that include English language learners, seniors, and other persons who may require assistance to live safely and comfortably in their Albany homes, and or to participate in community activities. So that whole section that used to be in I think that's the one that changed the most.
So that's no longer assigned to us? Because that's sort of the heart of what we had.
Right, so the council now has decided that they want to tackle this one themselves, and basically would make up a subcommittee of a mayor and vice mayor to work on the work plan item number 1. And all the others, I think.
There aren't any others.
And then promote health and wellness. This is the sugar sweetened beverage tax
Yeah.
revenues, which is what you've done already, and will continue to do per the ordinance. Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that, for example, the issue of
what I would recommend is, you continue to work on your work plan and suggest, because this is a draft work plan that you're going to be presenting to council. So if you have items that are of interest to you and that you want to pursue, include them on your work plan. And then when you present to council, explain why you would like to pursue these items and have that conversation with council and see if they're supportive or not. So,
Okay. If in fact this committee's focus is collecting information and engaging with people, that doesn't preclude actually anything that we've
no,
done.
exactly, and I think that's the idea, is that your work plan should support the council strategic plan, but if you have other, interest or,
And the eighth.
this is the time to put them in the work plan and present it to council and have that conversation with the council.
All right. So let's go back to the work plan, and Margie, you wanted to speak?
Okay, I wanted to add, and I would add it under promote housing ability. There's now a 1, 2, 3. I would make this a 4. And this is what I would say. Investigate funding sources to be used for diverse housing projects in Albany. And what I am specifically talking about is we do not, there's no limitations or anything on Airbnbs in Albany. And I'd like to go after that money to spend on housing. So,
I think that was mentioned at the council meeting last night.
yeah.
As a potential work plan addition. Let me see where that was.
I think they're taking a rental unit off the market, and I mean, I don't have to talk you guys into it.
Yeah, we understand that.
Because if it falls under one of the goals and objectives, you want to put it there.
Well, I think it's promote housing availability is where I would put it, but maybe someone else has it better.
I think that makes sense, that we just explain.
Explore, funding.
Okay.
Okay, so can we take a look at this draft now? Did everyone have a chance to look at it? In terms of what's new here, under promote housing availability, the new things are review all new multifamily housing proposals for affordability needs of the community and advise the council on social and economic justice implication of state and regional housing mandates. Those are things that we added.
Margie, can you repeat what
Yes,
you said?
investigate funding sources to be used for diverse housing projects in Albany.
Anyone else have any additions or suggestions about what's here?
Specific to 1.2 or across the board?
Well, we can start with 1.2.
I don't have anything on 1.2.
So Margie is suggesting an addition. Why don't we take this one piece at a time then and see if we're ready to have a motion about section 1.2.
Is it possible that we could just do it all together, just the work? Do we want to do it separately?
Well, if we're comfortable, it'll go very quickly. I just want to make sure we don't miss anything.
I can go over all the changes once you've done discussing the work plan, and then if you feel comfortable with the changes, then you can make a motion for the
Okay.
entire
All
document.
right, fine. So anything else on 1.2 that anybody wants to add or suggest? If not, then 2.1. Connect with and engage the community.
And that's essentially or is that objective 3 that the council essentially took back? So
Well,
the inclusivity, objective 2.2 is what the council took back.
Yes.
Can I suggest that we just go through the draft of our own work plan before we try to weave it into the new strategic plan? I'm really struggling with what page to look at.
Yeah.
So if we can just, for the first rush, go through the strategic plan draft that we have and not worry too much about how it fits into the revised strategic plan, because I think we can probably creatively put it in anywhere, so.
Actually, I think that's actually a really good idea. I think we just move forward with our original goals and let the council, if the council, we serve at the pleasure of the council. If they wish to take something away or add something, that's up to them. I think it's, I believe it's imperative that we keep aging in place. And I think that's something we're all interested in kind of working on. And
It was under 2.2.
yeah.
She-
So I'm happy with everything else on the work plan. I would like to see us keep aging in place, and hopefully we can make that known to the council.
Right. And I would hope that, we might have to, separate than just changing the number, and if we're now on objective 3 of number 2, which, used to be 2.2.
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Yeah.
I'll change the numbers, yeah.
To figure out, to try to utilize under objective 3, number 2, to reflect input received. It's possible that the way that that's written, that it, refers back to the subcommittee of the council, but it's not inherent, and that if we tried to say, tied both the diversity report card and the excellent proposal we have there and the social justice impact report, as to put them as part of this input under objective 3, number 2, that we could shoehorn what we had under the prior even into this framework that they've shifted around. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Because I thought Judy's proposals were strong. I thought her discussion last time was on point, and I would want to figure out how we keep nudging that back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to suggest that those two items, inclusivity and diversity, as they've been drafted and initially discussed with the commission, could fit under 2.1. So on our plan, 2.1, engage our diverse communities. So we can work on where that fits into the less than 24-hour-old, newly born plan.
So I'm hearing that people generally are comfortable with this the way it is, minus some adjustments. Let's open it to guests.
Thank you very much, Commission, for working on this. Preston Jordan. And I'm just noticing that your item 6-5 tonight, which corresponds to Goal 3, Objective 1.2, is not in your work plan. So that
It's there.
Objective 1.2 under Engage Our Diverse Communities, identify opportunities, conduct additional outreach to promote utilization of available low-income senior tax exemptions and other programs, evaluate effectiveness. So that's something you have on your agenda tonight. So I would suggest adding that to your work plan. I would also, I'll talk more about that later under that item. There's two other components that I would ask that you add to your work plan. One is a review of existing tax measures and whether some of those should have low-income provisions built into them. That would obviously involve putting them back on the ballot, and then the voters could decide. They could be unchanged otherwise, or they could be slightly increased to compensate for those households that take advantage of a low-income measure. But currently, there are not very many taxes that have those measures out of the 10 or so taxes that Albany has. So if we want to reach economic justice within Albany's own tax structure, some of those legacy measures are going to need to have low-income provisions built in. So that's something you could put in your work plan to look at and make a recommendation to the council on. And I'm blanking at the moment. There were 3 different things. Something that could be looked at as a part of that is right now, there are only full 100% exemptions or 100% rebates for very low-income households, which I think is 50% of median income. You could consider having a half rebate, half exemption for households that are low income, which I think is 80% of median income. So this would be a way for Albany to actually start to calibrate its taxes to income, which they are not now. So low-income households, even if they take advantage of the exemptions, end up paying a higher percentage of their income to Albany in taxes than do other households. So, yeah, that would be great if you took a look at that. And then the third thing is the council has adopted a policy that was prepared by the city manager that was pursuant to, well, actually, the last item, all 3 of these items were pursuant to resolutions passed by this commission in 2011 or 12, so it's taken that long to move this forward. The policy that was passed was to consider low-income exemptions as a part of all franchise agreements and taxes in the future. And I think it would be nice to change the default of that so that they will be included unless the council finds otherwise. And the reason for that, if you'll
Go ahead.
give me a little more time, the reason for that is that in the measure, property tax measure to support sidewalk repair, it was sent to the registrar without the rebate provision. So it had the exemption provision, but not the rebate provision. Fortunately, staff sent me the draft since I was somewhat the leader on that measure. And I noticed that wasn't included. Council was on recess, so I was panicked that it wasn't going to be included. I let staff know. They went back and reviewed the council video, thankfully, and thankfully there was enough time before the deadline for the registrar, and they said, you're right, the rebate was supposed to be in there. We didn't include it. They added it in and sent the registrar a new document. So that's why I think having a policy that says the default is that these will be included unless the council specifically says they will not be included is a safer mechanism to allay those kinds of mistakes, possible catastrophic mistakes in the future. So 3 items, looking at that policy, looking at how the outreach is going for the existing rebates, and considering potentially retrofitting rebates and exemptions onto existing tax measures. Thanks very much.
We do have provide input on outreach efforts regarding information on low-income senior tax exemptions. It's item 1.
Oh, so I guess it's a numbering thing because in the strategic plan that comes under goal 2, objective 1.
Yeah, we didn't have the strategic plan.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. All right. Great. Thanks.
Okay. But your other suggestions are not included, so, yeah. Does anybody want to pick up on that?
Well, they could be included in that,
Right.
in that, what we just put out, right?
So that along with, perhaps, is this what you're suggesting, Margie, that along with saying provide input on outreach efforts, as we say, we could say, and also advise council on further measures to make rebates a default, or to further measures to ensure that new and existing tax measures.
That would be great.
So just a phrase added on. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, because this is limited to outreach efforts. We need to say something more than that. Say that again. So that,
Okay, so something like, where it now says provide input on outreach efforts regarding information on low-income senior tax exemptions, we could just, add, and provide input to council on ways to, on equalizing burdens on existing and future Albany tax measures. Something like that. Is that?
okay, there's a motion. I'll second.
No, there's no motion right now. It's
Okay, I
Should I-
move that we approve the statement.
I thought we were going to review the whole
Yeah.
work plan and then make a motion at the end.
All right, that's fine.
For all changes, and I'll go over the changes.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Anything else that anybody wants to add or modify? Well, then we are there.
Do we want to see
We-
if
we
there's
wanna
anyone
keep-
else from the public?
Oh, I'm sorry, but were there more? No, okay. I thought they weren't.
We're keeping objective 2.3, except it's not developed, but it's with regards to the sugar sweetened beverage tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think that on what is here, our 2.2, which will shift if this council work plan stays this way, do you think we need to change the language in order to make sure it fits? I mean, with the items they have, my fear is item number 1 on our objective 3 doesn't give us space. So just to make sure that we're fulfill council's, goal of, reflecting input by providing input on these things? Or do you think we can just count on that being?
I think that Isabel and I can massage it a little bit so it fits with
Okay.
council's categories. But when do we present to council?
May 20th, so you could review this at your May meeting
Yeah,
also.
so we'll have a draft with those adjustments for the May meeting.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe we could have a cleaned up, something to look
Yeah.
at on that meeting, and then do we want to move it?
No, all we need to do now, I think, is to deal with Greg's motion, and then I think,
Well, you don't need to make a motion if you're going to review it again in May.
Okay.
Right, so I've taken good
so you add
notes.
that in, and then we'll review this in May and make a final decision
Yes.
at that point.
I think, and then that then has the potential, if something else comes along between now and then, that if we do need to add something between now and when we go before council, we'll have that time
Yeah,
frame.
we do have that time, yeah. Okay, good.
I'd just like to add one quick thing, specifically with regard to the recommendation from the public, from Mr. Preston this evening of having an opt-out essentially for low-income taxes. I don't think any of us is in a position to predict what the future holds. And it may well be that the city of Albany needs to back off on low-income exemptions in order to sustain its ongoing services. So I think in light of the city council's sound and transparent management of city financial resources, we should discuss this a bit further.
Yes.
I think just having an absolute across-the-board tax exemption for low-income or moderate-income individuals for any future tax measure is something that's worthy of a longer discussion.
But I think Greg's wording leaves it open. It doesn't, so we can, it becomes an item we can focus on. All right, then. Moving on to Albany Project Hope, we have their basic, what is this thing that we have?
Okay, so basically, Albany, this is their scope of work as part of their contract with the city. And the commission has expressed interest in providing input on the renewal of the next contract. And so this is your opportunity to either make comments now on, I know in the past there's been some mentioning of, the performance measures. We'd like to see different types of performance measures. So you could certainly provide feedback tonight on those, or you'll see that they also provide a service tracking outreach table, and that's part of their quarterly report that you review quarterly. And they also include a narrative. And so if there's anything else that you'd like to see as part of these quarterly reports, you could certainly provide the feedback now. And then, or you could also choose to create a subcommittee that would review the scope and then come back to the commission with some recommendation at the May meeting. The idea, though, is that we will be going to council with the Albany Project Hope, BFHB, the renewal, late, probably at the second meeting in May, or at the latest, beginning of June, so that if you want any of your feedback considered, it would have to be by your May meeting. And then, yeah, so that was the idea of the item.
Can I add since we were talking about them giving out these vouchers or these incentives, I'd like to know how much money they're spending on these. I mean, there's nothing anywhere here
Well,
that...
no, because this is the contract for this year. So if council chooses to give, to give the HEAP funds to support Albany Project Hope, so the contract renewal will include that funding.
They already have money now that they're spending, right?
Yes.
So I'd like to see how that money's being spent. Like, how much of it's going out in voucher, like that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just not part of that because it's not really what the item asks, but if you want some of that information as part of the quarterly review, we can certainly put that in there. The invoices that they submit on a monthly basis are public documents that we can make available in a spreadsheet or...
And so those monthly are part of the scope of work and are provided to the city. And so it sounds like we're just asking not for a change of the scope of work, but for that also to be on this front, but for that to just be provided to us.
Yeah.
That'd be part of the quarterly report.
Yeah.
To use that, how much money has been spent on subsidies and...
Yes.
Yes.
So is this the project performance measures and targets? That's a quarterly spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and you'll be getting a quarterly report at the May meeting. The plan for the May meeting is a quarterly report on Project Hope, Albany Cares, and rent review.
I want to apologize for my relative lack of understanding of this contract, but I'm not, and mostly because I haven't participated in earlier discussions as to how it has come into being, but is this a blank slate, or does Berkeley Food and Housing Project, because of the nature of its funding and its fundamental purpose, have restrictions on what we can ask it to do?
Well, the purpose of Albany Project Hope is to provide services to people who are experiencing homelessness, and at this time, they provide the whole gamut. It's like it starts with outreach on the street all the way to housing and keeping people housed and everything in between, and that's basically what this scope is. We can't ask them to do something that is not related to housing people who are homeless. That's not what they do.
And I guess where I miss the context from prior discussions is how inclusive, how much that covers, how big is the waterfront on that?
It's basically everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Anyone? One thing that the committee spoke about several times, and I think is still important to us, is that there be periodic collection of client feedback and that be reported to us.
Yeah, and I've already made a note that would be part of the next scope as part of the deliverables, is
Yeah.
that client feedback, once it's selected, once they have it, be provided to us as part of one of the quarterly reports. So I think that when they presented to us, they said that they were going to collect feedback in April. So I would think, we'll probably get the feedback as part of their quarterly report for the last quarter of the fiscal year. So we'll probably see it in, I'm thinking July or September, actually, because we get the report in July. And
So that would be a kind of a client satisfaction survey.
yes, yes, and that's already a note that I've made
Okay,
to
good.
include as part of the scope.
And they need to, I think we understand that when we're talking about people looking for housing in this market, that there's going to be a certain amount of dissatisfaction. I mean, they can't be responsible for what doesn't exist, but But the question is, are people satisfied with the services they receive? Anything else that anybody wants to see?
Just a real quick one. Again, I'm apologizing for my lack of familiarity with the report, but I'd like to see some reflection of the age of individuals served.
That would be helpful in terms of youth, too.
Yeah, they do provide a demographics data.
Is that part of the public report?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if that's not confidential information, I'd like to see that.
Right, yeah, no, I think it's already, I'll have to, it's not here, but
We haven't seen it in the past.
you haven't seen, okay, I think maybe because part of it, the way it's set up may have, but we could, yes,
Yeah.
we can make some changes.
The one thing that always perplexes me is that they talk about continuing to support people for as long as they need, and I don't know how they decide that. How long do people need? And what's the potential of that absorbing time that might be needed for new people? So how do they balance that?
Well, there are rapid rehousing procedures, policies and procedures that they operate under. There is some flexibility with that. Usually it's 12 months,
Okay.
but definitely we've had people stay with BFHP as long as 2 years, especially people who have been chronically homeless for a long time and need a lot of help. So they don't let go of anybody until that person decides that they can be independent, but the idea is that the subsidy will decrease over time so that the person can
No,
be
not so much
independent,
this- yeah.
or that they are moved to another program that can support them.
It was always, I always had the feeling that perhaps one of the reasons that people felt they weren't getting enough attention from the previous caseworker is that that person was very much involved in spending a lot of time supporting the housed people and was therefore less available.
Yeah, well, there's ebbs and flows, because, when we first started with the program, with the BFHP program, we housed quite a few people, so
Right.
the focus was on making sure that people who were housed got what they needed, and that takes a long time. So, and that's why at one point we also, as part of the contract, increased the contract to have another part-time case manager help with that service. And now I think where we're at is basically we have some people in housing, but it's not overwhelming the case manager. Case manager is able to spend her time quite equally between all of the, and then the other thing that has changed in the county is that there's coordinated entry. So our case manager is supported by a team, a county team. So it's not that, she's operating on our own anymore. So there's been a lot of changes over the last 5 to 6 years.
It's a hard thing to quantify, I agree. Okay. Anything else? We ready to move on? Sugar sweetened beverage tax.
Did we need a motion on that, or?
No.
No, I
Just
just,
relay it?
yeah,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
yes, thank you.
Judy, were you going to make that report?
I did, and I will, and again, if you like. I was at the work session last night, and I presented our 3 non-prioritized items to the council, and they appreciated the report. I unfortunately was not able to stay to see what the outcome was, and I'm not sure that has been finally determined at this point, but
Basically, council gave us their priorities for funding, and staff is now, well, this was last night, but we've already started researching, all of the programs, and we will go back to council in about a month, beginning of May, with an expenditure plan. But the things that they've prioritized are existing programs currently funded with SSB, so more water bottle fillers, the crossing guard program, more free exercise classes and cooking, nutrition, a lot of emphasis on children's health and fitness, the bike safety program, and we've also been asked to look into the cost for the mobile medical clinic for people experiencing homelessness, the dental clinic, and wellness clinics at the senior center. So not necessarily that they would be funded by SSB, but to look into whether or not there's possibilities for other funding, or that, because these programs, for instance, the podiatry, the wellness clinic, my first call was to the county to see if there's currently any agencies in the county that is funded to provide that services at senior centers. And if there are, and invite them to come to Albany. So just, so doing some of that legwork to see. So, but it was clear from Vice Mayor McQuaid that she wanted that information so she could make some decisions based on what we find on the availability of those services. And we will be reporting on the installation of public restrooms also, either as part of SSB or the HEAP. Probably HEAP because it's closer. Yeah.
All right. Anything else on that anybody wants? Anyone from the community? No? Low income and senior tax exemption. We have a report.
Yes, so basically this is something that we do each year. The city has an ordinance imposing 3 City of Albany parcel taxes. There's a library service tax of 1994, another one in 2006, and then the City of Albany street paving and storm drain facility improvement parcel tax of 2006. And they all provide exemptions for low-income residents. On the staff report, you'll see that there's a chart that outlines how many residents have availed themselves of the service in each of the fiscal years. And so there's a parcel tax exemption for homeowners and a renter rebate for renters that the library services tax provides. And
So it says applications processed, or all the applications that are processed are approved?
no, so it's basically applications approved.
Approved, okay.
Yes. And then just to give you a little bit of an overview, so basically what happens is we wait for, not us, but we have Avenue. So that basically, no, sorry, NBS provides, collects the tax, administers the application process. So you have a copy of the draft application that was submitted last year, and we've updated it for this year. There could be some changes. The council has not made a determination on the actual rates, but they will later in the year, by the end of the fiscal year. And then HUD has not determined the new household size income limits yet. But once that's determined, then the letter is finalized, and NBS will send the application to people who applied for who were basically eligible for the service and for the exemption and applied. And then we also, you'll see the last attachment is a postcard that we send citywide, letting people know that the application is ready and available. So we send that to every household in Albany. And then we also post flyers, and we do our social media and website outreach. But we do also send this postcard citywide at the beginning of May.
Okay. Let me suggest, we've got the report, so that's fine. Since we've now added this issue to our work plan, why don't we defer discussion on it till we get to the work plan on that?
It's in your current work plan also.
Yeah, but in terms of the substance of, this is a report, in terms of what that means and what we want to recommend to the city about it, I think we need to do some work on that. Because, for example, while I'm pleased to see that the numbers have gone up year by year, they're still fairly low in terms of the percentage of people in the city who might be eligible. And so it becomes a question of, is there something that should be done?
And that's what we're asking tonight, is
yeah.
if you have any ideas for outreach other than what we're doing.
Is there a way for us to actually establish an N in terms of who's eligible for this?
Establish a,
A baseline, how many people, what's our N that we're looking for to compare if we're coming near 50%? What's our target number?
right, no, there's no target, there's no baseline. Basically, it's,
We don't know.
So in census,
don't,
in
no.
Census 2020, will we receive any information from that data gathering about how many low-income individuals we have? And of course, it changes year to year with.
and then the other thing is people who live in UC Village are not eligible for this exemption.
I see, so they would
So
reflect
then-
in the census, but they would just
Yes.
skew the number, okay.
Exactly.
We do have census data. Preston wrote a note that some of you, we all got, that he estimated based on the census that there are 2,200 households in Albany that could qualify.
That feels, no, that's too high.
Well,
I would imagine that
I
some
would
of
want
that's
to
in
know
the-
how that
yeah.
number was arrived
that-
at.
yeah, I haven't done the work myself, but if you look at, it's not hard to do if you look at the county statistics on the number of people at different salary level, at different income levels in the city. It's not a mystery. So we might want to do that and see whether in fact, we ought to be looking for further increases. I don't know that there's any way of targeting the communication. We don't.
And it's already targeted to the people who've applied in the past, but other than that, it's really hard to figure out who. That's why we do it citywide.
And you
We
do it
just send to
citywide, and
everybody.
it's a postcard, and I'm not sure what else you could do, really.
I will share that we've had 2 renters come into the Albany Cares program who've sought assistance in applying, and we've been able to help them. So that is a venue where we can provide some additional support beyond a postcard.
And Albany Cares, can help with the outreach, right? When you have somebody, of course, you'll know about this, and if somebody lives in Albany and is low income, that can be part of the discussion.
And that's, I know before we had the resource center, but the Albany Cares this is almost like a whole new process that's starting out. So this may be the thing that we need to get that word out. The key is getting the word out about Albany Cares. And I know the issue of, I think this all kind of boils back down to the one issue we've kind of talked about, which is how to communicate, not just this commission, but the city, and how to communicate with the public. And it's a very difficult issue because if you look at different controversial subjects around the city, everyone will say the same thing, that they were never notified. I was notified the other day that a tree somewhere on Solano is going to be removed. So you have to actually open, and I was shocked, frankly, because I'm used to the postcard, and this was an actual letter, which is a little nervous when you see a letter come from the city. I was actually a little bit shocked, and I was like, oh, that's new, that's different. But you have to be, you can't, everybody gets a lot of junk mail,
Yeah.
but you have to take the time as a member of the public to take a look at it and see, that this is, that something's coming from the city and this is what we're talking about, so.
Does I didn't look closely, but does the material that we send out about Albany Cares, does it include that information is available about low-income assistance programs of various kinds?
I think so. Yes, it's part of the flyer, and as part of the presentation next month.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to
Yeah, because,
give you some
people may think
information on
that
outreach.
they only go there if they have a problem, but there are other things that are available. They may not know they have a problem.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention also that my report doesn't mention it because, sorry, I copy and pasted it from last year, but the application does that we do have the sidewalk taxes, that there's exemptions also, and it's on the application.
Okay. All right, I think that's all we can do for now on this, and then we'll pick it up on the work plan. Go ahead.
I apologize, I had to leave. I had to go home and take care of my wife. Thanks for taking this up, and I think this is the first time in 4 years that this has been taken up. And I'm actually on the Traffic and Safety Commission. It occurred to me, the Traffic and Safety Commission gets a report on accidents every month. And so I suggested it would be useful if this commission set a policy of getting a report on the uptake and utilization of these very low-income exemptions and rebates every September, just to keep it on your radar so it doesn't have to keep getting pushed back onto the radar. I would also suggest that the numbers themselves are not as instructive to the public as the estimated percent of very low-income households that are utilizing these. So the numbers themselves can tell you something about trend, but according to the last census, there's something like 2,400 very low-income households in Albany, which is, I think, a surprise to people. And probably about 800 of those are in University Village. But what numbers you take, we're like 5% utilization. So I think having that denominator and having the percentage would be useful as a part of these reports so we see how well we're doing in outreach. As far as outreach, part of what got me going on this in 2010-11 was that the Climate Action Committee, then Sustainability Committee, had received data from PG&E regarding utilization of electricity and natural gas. And I happened to notice in that it had the number of accounts that were on CARE, which is the statewide program, investor-owned utility statewide program for low-income households to get a reduction on the cost of electricity and natural gas. And it was about 600 households. And around the same time, the free and reduced price meal program at the schools, something about that was published, and there was about 750 to 800 students who utilized that. So that was the information that made me realize that we're completely out of whack. Those aren't 100% enrollment either, but obviously they're order of magnitude better than Albany. So that could be one source of looking at how outreach is done. It occurs to me, though, for Albany to do outreach could be difficult and duplicative. And what might, given that the utility company seems to be successful in this area, and it might take state legislation due to privacy concerns and whatnot, but it'd be great if these households had one-stop shopping, so they didn't have to go to the utility, go to the city, go to the school district, go to all these different jurisdictions, but that once they enrolled, they got it all in one shot. And that way we wouldn't be struggling with replicating outreach, because I think PG&E puts a lot into the outreach. So those are some ideas on how we might be able to improve down the line.
Thank you. We will be talking about this more. Okay. So we're now up to commission composition, which refers to the possibility of requesting council increase the members of the commission. Do we want to talk about this now?
I would. I think we have the aging, the housing. I think there's some big subjects, and I think it would be helpful to have more than 2 people on a subcommittee. And if the commission were larger, then we could have 3 on a subcommittee. And I think it would be helpful with the work that we're doing to have more people, especially a youth voice. So I would move to ask the council to appoint an at-large member and a member from the high school to be on the Social Justice and Economic Commission.
Do we have a second?
I think we should have a discussion first, and maybe the public.
Well, we can discuss the motion. We're not going to vote on it right now.
Well,
Go ahead.
part of the problem is
We don't have a second.
I'll second.
Thanks.
if we have a motion and a second, then we have to vote.
Not till we can have discussion on the motion.
Discuss it first.
That's how Robert's Rules works. You make a motion, then you discuss. But go ahead.
Absent the second, we're not supposed to discuss that, right?
So I spoke with a few council members with regards to this subject, and they did do outreach to the schools, and there was unfortunately no takers. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. I just think I'm not quite sure if we're going to be getting, I mean, I was on this commission before, and getting a student was excessively difficult, because you only have, the reality is you only have a student for part of the year. You don't have that student during the summer, because most of the kids aren't going to want to come to the Social and Economic Justice Commission meeting during the summer. And it was compounded with schoolwork and everything else. It was very difficult to get a student at that time to stay on the commission. I don't necessarily think an at-large member is a bad idea, but I think it's going to be a real uphill battle with a high school student.
I want to respond to that, because I was on the commission too, and the first 2 high school students we had both said they were only doing it to put it on their college application, and that was the only reason. The last 2 actually that we had on the commission were regular appointments. They weren't just high school students. They were high school students that applied to be on the commission, and they were from the activity club at the high school. So they were interested in political things and were great, absolutely fantastic members of this commission. So I think if we go to the right place in the high school, we can get someone who's not just doing it to put something on their college resume, someone who's actually interested in activism and wants to do things in the city. So I think there's a place that we could get the person that would be better than just at large from the high school.
I want to raise a strategic question here. I'm in favor of this generally, but I'm not sure whether we should do this now or whether we ought to wait until the work plan is approved. Because part of the argument we'll need to make to the council is that we have enough work that we need more people. And given where we are at the moment, I'm not sure, we can make that case until we settle the issue of what actually is on the work plan. I mean, if the work plan we have, certainly I think you could make the case. But if the council doesn't accept all of those items, we might find ourselves in some difficulty to say that we need more people. I think you can argue also, though, that it's great to have more citizen participation, and I don't see what the point is of keeping the commission as small as possible. But anyway, I'm not sure this is the right moment. That's all.
I guess I'd like to just add that I don't think we're the only commission that needs youth representation. And I think the need for senior representation exists across all commissions within the city as well. And as part of our goal of inclusion, we might want to think about making a recommendation to council that an at-large member of youth from the high school with a term of September to June and a 12-month term for a senior be considered for all commissions.
I think the
Are
senior.
you saying I'm not senior?
I'm saying you don't represent that particular demographic in your current appointment.
I think Bart's point about timing is well taken, and that obviously our great fear is we say, we've got too much work, give us more people, and they say, well, how about we give you less work? And then, so.
Well, I'm willing to withdraw my proposal at this time.
What if we table it
Yeah, that's fine. That works.
until we've settled the work plan and then bring it back up?
Yeah, that
Is
works.
that acceptable? Okay.
Do the public want to
Preston, you
say?
want to say something?
So again, there's a history of advisory bodies that are composed of 5 members who are appointed directly by single council members and 2 members who are appointed by the council as a whole. And I would say it's not a particularly good history, because what happens is if there are substantially divisive issues, then a simple majority of the council can fill those 2 extra seats, and you end up with a body that's split 5 to 2. And so with that kind of 5-2 split, the 5 really don't penny never mind to the 2. So you get an unbalancing of the body relative to what the voters have actually asked for. So this occurred with the Charter Review Committee around the directly elected mayor, which I'm remembering now, I think Chair Grossman was on the body at that time, and it was a 7-member body, and it was a hugely contentious issue, and in part because it was a 5-2 split. And the Waterfront Committee was 7 people, and that also went to a 5-2 split, and I would say that contributed to spending $1 million on Voices to Vision. That was where that started. So I would really caution you not to add council as a whole appointees. I think if you want to add more appointees, I would add them for the school board, because that seems to historically provide some balance. In other words, they're not as polarizing appointees. So, yeah, think hard about it before you go there. We actually, a group of us on Charter Review Committee, tried to come up with a method by which the council would result in appointing 2 appointees that provided balance. And it was just an incredibly Rube Goldberg thing, because you were talking about 5 council members. And it was actually Councilmember Weil who had the breakthrough and said, let's just eliminate all the council as a whole appointees, and that'll solve it. So I really don't want to go backwards on that. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, we'll table that item until after we deal with the work plan. Commission subcommittee guidelines. What this was is there was talk last time about the fact that we can, in fact, have people on subcommittees who are not members of the commission. And so it struck Isabel and I that maybe we ought to have some guidelines for how you do that. And so we drafted something and got some input. And this is just a proposal for discussion in terms of when and how you would include somebody who's not a member. Has everyone had a chance to look at it?
Yes.
Thoughts, reactions?
I like it. I think it's very well written. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
I might be the one naysayer, so I'll go. I don't have an issue with it. I actually think it's pretty well written. My concern is coming back to the Brown Act, and that a non-commissioned member, should we have that person as part of a subcommittee, so now we're a subcommittee of 3, we are now Brown Act.
Right.
So my concern is that member, that public member of the subcommittee might not have the experience or have gone through the Brown Act training and might become the spoke of the wheel. So I'm talking to one subcommittee member about one thing and then emailing the other subcommittee member about another thing, and now you have a Brown Act violation. And that's a concern. And so I'm trying to figure out how we go about doing that. And I think it's a problem or a solution in search of a problem. So we don't even have a work plan. So we may want to just kind of cross this bridge when we come to it. The issue of having a public member on the subcommittee is I would want to know, is there going to be staff time involved? Because now it's a public meeting, which means it has to be agendized. It's now, where would we meet? Because a subcommittee can't meet, they'd have to do the work at the public meeting if they wanted to work together. So that's the key of having a subcommittee, so that you can have two people on the commission interact with each other without violating the Brown Act. And you know, the Brown Act is there for transparency for the public, and I find that important. So that's I like the guidelines that you guys laid out. I think that's really good. I just wouldn't want to bring a member of the public on to every subcommittee just to engage them. I mean, that's kind of what we're here to do.
Yeah, no, I would agree that there are lots of disincentives that are involved in having somebody who's not a member of the commission be on a subcommittee. There'd have to be a good reason. And the subcommittee, the commission would have to approve that appointment. It wouldn't be just the subcommittee's choice.
And the primary reason I can imagine to bring a member of the public onto a subcommittee is because there's special expertise that's needed. And I wonder if there isn't a way around gathering that information without actually having that expertise, that expert, be a member of the subcommittee. Maybe there's a compromise place that we could reach. I think that as we address the topic of aging and really making our community an age-friendly community, we're going to need more expertise. And I want us to get that somehow. So I hope we don't lose that objective.
It says in the guidelines, and I think it's true, that the commission, a subcommittee can always meet with an expert. There's no problem with doing that. They don't have to be a member.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a creative and intriguing idea. I don't think if a minority of the voting members of this body are on a subcommittee and you add a member of the public, that it would be a Brown Act violation, because you would still have a minority of this body on it.
Right.
City attorney says it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a Brown Act violation, but what happens is it becomes a it then is required to meet Brown Act requirements.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just because you've added somebody. Wow.
Yeah.
I think not two members meeting an expert is not the issue. The issue is the body then adding a member of the public to the subcommittee.
Makes it its own
body.
body.
Makes it its own body.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Thanks.
So what, if anything, do we want to do about this at the moment?
I mean, I guess where I sit is I feel like this is a good way of dealing with the issue if it comes up, but I'm very skeptical of, of adding subcommittee members.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not opposed to this as our policy when we deal with it, but I am, want to re-inject what has been said before, that, and we all need to take it really seriously about not rushing to add people.
Yeah. So do you want to accept these guidelines in the case that we should decide to add somebody with an understanding that it's not something we want to do very often?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Well, then I think that we're up to talking about our next meeting. And we will, what will we have? We'll have a draft of the work plan to approve. And I think that's really it.
We'll have
Anything
Well,
else?
we'll have Project Hope and CARES, Albany CARES
Yeah.
is making a report too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
we'll have reports.
yes, quarterly reports
Yeah.
will be coming to you.
Yeah, but until the work plan gets approved, we really can't organize ourselves into subcommittees, so.
And is there any further work that we need to do with regard to the HEAP recommendations?
No, not at this time.
And presumably, the proposal that was circulated by Judy about the potential scorecards and so on, those we're going to put off until we know it's a part of the work plan.
They're mentioned in the
Yeah,
work plan now. so,
right.
Yeah. So they're
Okay,
there.
so the memo she circulated about the form,
Yeah.
we'll deal with that when it's
Yeah.
part of the work plan. Okay.
All right, then,
All right, thank you.
I guess we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.